5 Guantanamo Bay detainees, most linked to the 9/11 attacks, got together in what they call a Shura Council, and they came up with a 6-page document that authorities have now released. In that, quoting from this document, they say, "To us, they are badges of honor about the attacks which we carry with pride. Killing and fighting you about the U.S., destroying you and terrorizing you, responding back to your attacks are all considered to be great legitimate duty in our religion. Our religion is a religion of fear and terror to the enemies of God, the Jews, the Christians, and pagans. We are terrorists to the bone, so many thanks to God." This coming out on a day we have just learned, breaking news from 2 sources according to Fox, one counterterrorism official and one senior defense official, that the Taliban's new top operations officer in southern Afghanistan was in fact a prisoner at Gitmo in 2007. So, let's bring in our panel. Fred Barnes, executive editor of the Weekly Standard. Kirsten Powers, columnist of the New York Post, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Fred, we're just learning about this operations officer being used to be in Gitmo.
Yeah, well, a lot of them.
Not a surprise.
Yeah, the Associated Press refers to the latest freed detainee who went back and became a terrorist again. Been a lot of them. The recidivism rate has been very high, and of course, it's an argument for keeping Guantanamo open. It's a perfect place to have them. It's kind of a country club, even though they claim it's a terrible prison. And you can't let them go. You can't let them go on trial in the U.S. because they didn't get their Miranda rights and so on. So that won't work. I think the best thing to do would be to have a military commission in private, sentence them, leave Gitmo open, and let them stay there for the rest of their lives, and not make them martyrs by executing them. Their document, I love their document. They refer to the conspiracy charge against them as a very laughable accusation. There was just laughable stuff in here in this propaganda document where they talk about, we have news for you. You will be greatly defeated in Iraq, among other places. I don't know, maybe they just haven't gotten the word. They lost there.
Kirsten.
Well, I don't think at country clubs you're actually held against your will, so I wouldn't really compare it to a country club. I think it is, at the end of the day, a prison. These are a lot of bad people, not just these people, but there are a lot of bad people down there. But that said, I think that these people should be tried, and they all should be tried. And you can't keep people without charging them. The Supreme Court has said that. And look, they've said that they did it. They're proud that they did it. Put them on a stand and let them say that in front of a jury and try them and put them in jail. I mean, that's how they should be dealt with. I don't think that even President Bush did not want to keep Gitmo open.
Charles.
I guess the commander of the enemy top commander in southern Afghanistan, who used to be in Gitmo, failed the 12-step rehab program that they had for him when he was released in Afghanistan. Probably the step about remorse and compassion. Look, these guys are telling us who they are in this document. It's not a legal document. They don't recognize the authority of the courts, civil or military, whether established by Obama or Bush. This is a propaganda document, and it tells us they are self-declared enemy, and it is absolutely insane to want to treat them as criminals. This is a war on terror, and they are telling us we are your enemy. We're not the criminals. That means that in all other wars, as in all other wars, they ought to be detained without trial and without a lawyer and without Miranda, the way the Germans and the Italians and Japanese prisoners in the Second World War were detained, until the war is over, and the war ends when Al-Qaeda surrenders. Until then, it's their war, which they started. They are the enemy, and we detain them without excuse. I think having them in detention and denying them habeas corpus is a principle that we ought to establish. And for another reason, we've got more prisoners in Afghanistan held in Bagram Air Base prison than in Gitmo. And if the Gitmo guys have the right to a lawyer and Miranda rights and a blog and all kinds of rights that you want to give them here in the U.S., why not the guys in Afghanistan? And if you establish that, how does an American soldier take a prisoner in Afghanistan? He's got to collect shells and accompany the prisoner on the flight to the United States in order that he can testify. It is absurd. This is a war. It's not criminality.
It's a complicated issue, Kirsten, for this administration. I mean, how have they dealt with it so far in your eyes?
Well, I think, well, of course, it's very complicated, and it's much easier to talk about in theory than to actually have to deal with and to actually have to be letting people go who we know are dangerous, which is why I think it's important to try them. But I do think that actually what Charles just brought up is probably going to become another issue. Human rights groups are already bringing it up, but the difference is...
About Bagram in Afghanistan.
Yes, but I think the difference is that the Supreme Court has ruled that the Constitution follows people who are in the United States, so it's not a matter of your nationality. I don't think it necessarily applies in that case. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I think it's a slightly different case, and because the law of the land is that these people are supposed to have habeas and they are supposed, you know, the Constitution follows them, then we are obliged to treat them that way.
You know, one of the things about this issue, this is one of the least complicated issues I've talked about in years. It is very simple, and it is not a battle of public relations that, gee, maybe some of the Europeans don't like Gitmo. Well, tough. This is a question of people who want to kill Americans. They want to kill them here. They want to kill them overseas. That's their whole goal in life. And to let them go and to even create the possibility where they might be released by some judge is something you don't want to do. They have to stay in prison. Look, after World War II and the Nuremberg trials, most of those Nazis were executed. I don't think these criminals would be.
No, Fred, but it's complicated when you say you want to close Guantanamo Bay and you don't have a way to do it.
That's a complication that Barack Obama created for himself. All he needs to say is, you know, I wish we had another place to put these guys, but we don't. So I think Gitmo's going to have to stay open a little longer. Very simple. Now, he may not want to reverse himself, but what's his other option? Does he have some other place to put him? Very simple. Not complicated at all.
Put him in Bagram.
But that's not even a country club.